welcome to another episode of This Works For Us podcast. We have some special guests today, and that is Eric and Sarah Schwartz.
Yes, Schwartz. Schwartz.
I'm trying not to put, I didn't see the T there, but it's like, I'm used to seeing the T there. So Schwartz.
Yeah. It's like we had a friend from Switzerland, and she said, "Hey," to him, "Do you know how to say your last name?"
I'm like,
German.
"Sure, it's Schwartz." And she goes, "No."
She said it's Schwarz. It's Schwarz.
I'm like, Schwarz. That sounds like farts.
Like that.
I made it, I was like, there's no T in there, so is it like Schwartz?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Schwartz?
So it's that German spelling for black. So it's Eric Black, but yeah.
The crazy part, because I've gone into some like convenience stores, and the people when they hear my name, Rashawn, and is it Arabic? Is it Rashwan? Like, no, it's not said that way. If it is, my mom, I don't know where my mom got it from, but guaranteed that was not the motivation at the time.
Yeah, like Ahmad Rashad. Is that like your last name? I mean, that's the only Rashad that I know.
It's Rashawn with
Rashawn.
Yeah. So the like our last name, Jackson and stuff, but to hear that some people, and we did a show about kind of like our pet peeves of how some people will mess up our name. Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, my name Rashawn, but somehow they say Rayshawn. My wife's name is Tia, Tia. They'll say Tina.
Oh, you just got to get the N in there. Got to get the Tina. Yeah.
But have you got the combination? What is your combination name?
I don't think we ever did that.
No.
We have our friends' kids.
Tia.
Exactly. Yeah. What's your Brangelina name?
Oh yeah. I don't know if that's gonna stick, but that's always.
Oh no!
We have kids.
Everybody at church going.
Yeah, they're gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna get your name for sure.
Yeah,
well, we're known to many of our friends' kids as Sarek. For some reason, all of the kids, they say, "Oh, is Sarek coming over?" And that just means us. And we're like, I guess that's our Brangelina name is Sarek.
That's awesome. That's something that you've given us something to think about as far as our Brangelina name and stuff. But we never thought about it. Never thought about it.
Right on.
Well, anyway, I like to, before we get into everything, I like to start off with a kind of like an icebreaker, even though we've broken the ice already in a sense, but got a nice little question for you here. So, describe your partner as a famous movie character and explain why.
You go first.
All right. So let's see. If I had to explain as a famous movie character, trying to think of what is that. It was a cartoon character. Should I describe you that way?
Sure.
So a little backstory here. I met my wife when, as we all know, women's hair colors may change over time. But I met her. She was not this color. She was a redhead.
I was a redhead.
And there was a movie. What is the movie called?
Roger Rabbit.
Roger Rabbit. I don't know. I'm dating myself here. So
no, we're probably we're probably right there.
And when I met her, she looked just the spitting image of, I don't even know the character's name. I just see her
Jessica
face.
Rabbit.
Jessica Rabbit. That's, and why? Why should I say that? I don't know. I don't know what she talked about. She was just blowing me away. She's colored me amazing. I mean, she's never changed since.
Oh, that's so
except
nice.
your hair color.
Except for my hair color. And you, what would you be? I can't possibly think. Maybe the King of Egypt or something like that from I don't know. I've never really thought about you as a famous character. One time this person said that he looked like Steve Buscemi. Do you know who that actor is? And I was like, he does not. He doesn't look anything like Steve Buscemi. But I guess I've never really thought about it. I'm going to have to think about that because I've never really thought of you as.
Okay, I want to hear your guys' answer.
That is amazing. So you flip back, on
that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
could I say that you are? I think because of your natural beauty, what I always admired, one actress that I always thought about for when it comes to natural beauty was Sanaa Lathan. She played in a myriad of movies, but one that comes Love and Basketball. Um, so I think of you as that because again, the natural beauty. I'm already always attracted to that.
Right on, right on.
So a little bit of history on myself. I have no idea of any actors' names or who anybody is.
Yeah, good.
So this
Good.
is like super difficult for me. I'm like, the guy that looks like, I don't know. So don't play Taboo with me. I never get the actress part or actor right. I guess I really never thought about that either.
All right.
I have to think about that. I'll have to get back to y'all on that
Yeah,
one. 'Cause
we'll come back at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say that probably some basketball player, that one of the basketball players that has a beard like you do that play.
Like you would know.
Like but as I say, I don't know their name. But at 6'4" with a big beard, I don't know, and bald head, that's kind of where he just slides right into that little era.
Yeah, right in there. Well, tell us how you guys met.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, okay,
I'll
so
let her take this one.
I was just coming off of a really long relationship with someone that I thought I was going to marry. I thought that was God's will for me.
Wait. I wasn't the only one.
baby, you are the only one.
Right.
Anyway, coming off of this placeholder back in the day that brought me to him, and I wasn't looking to date or get into any relationship because I had been kind of wounded from that relationship previous. And my best girlfriend, she had just had a baby, and her baby would only go to sleep for me. And so I would go over to her house every night and I would rock her baby so that he would fall asleep. And so this is back in, again, we're dating ourselves. This is back in 2001. So dating apps and things like that, apps, even barely cell phones were a thing back in 2001.
Right,
but
right.
there were chat rooms that were for the entire states that you lived in, not for dating, but just chatting with people. Everything, all of that was also new. And back then there was long distance phone calls.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. What's long distance? And so my girlfriend was in the chat room just talking with people. Back then we lived in the state of Oregon. And she was chatting with people in Oregon. And this guy was in college and chatted with, he was in Southern Oregon in college, and he was chatting with his buddy who was in Northern Oregon in college. And they were talking that way. And so she just happened to say, "Hey, is anybody here in Southern Oregon?" And he saw it go past, and
yeah, sure. I'm in Oregon.
Yeah. And so then she started like, okay, he. Little did I know she was pretending to be me in the chat room.
Wait. You mean I was catfished?
He was catfished.
Oh, what was the thing?
So anyway, that's how we met. And so she gave him her number, which was my number. And then he took me to dinner, and
kind of been inseparable ever since.
Yeah. And I even told him, I was like, look, don't get too attached. I'm playing the field right now. And he said, "Oh man, that's usually my line."
Wow.
And so literally we started hanging out every day, like as friends, but we were kind of interested in each other. And then it just like became best friends that were interested in each other. And then within, I mean, you even said to me something like, "Oh man, I'm totally never getting married. I'm not interested in marriage ever." And I was like, "Oh, that's a bummer for you. I want to get married someday, but whatever," just chatting about it. Within 6 months, he was on his knee with a ring for me.
Yeah.
So
Look
Hooked.
at that.
yeah, hook, line, and sinker.
Brought him
Yeah.
in.
Oh, wait, your friend, did she at least tell you that she gave somebody your number and
yeah, at the end of the night. Well, so and she had pictures of me, so it wasn't like she was sending pictures of herself or whatever, but she
so it was catfishing.
It was catfishing. Yeah, it was kind of it was definitely catfishing. But anyway, we met up for dinner and I matched the pictures at least that were sent, and so yeah, off we went. And we were married. We got married 1 year to the weekend of our first date, so it was pretty quick, but it worked. Here we are. Well, 23 years later. Yeah, still together.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
he's
Man.
still the one.
Always great to hear, marriages that last that long and continue to last that long.
How did y'all make it here to San Antonio?
Ooh, that's a journey. So we were living in Portland, Oregon during the
Summer of Love,
the pandemic. And anybody who watches the news, actually, it was actually worse in real life than what they were even portraying on the news, with the riots and the marches and the danger and the murders and the homeless situation, which really aren't homeless people. It's that Oregon legalized all drugs, including hard drugs. People could literally just shoot up heroin sitting on the street corner, and businesses were leaving left and right. And honestly, the evil that was being allowed to come into the city, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right? There are spiritual principalities, and we were seeing that bleeding into the city, into every aspect, into every law, into every lawmaker. And
churches were shutting down.
Yeah, churches, shockingly, or unshockingly, I guess, but shockingly, when the government said to have a seat, they took a full seat. And even when the president at the time said, listen, churches are essential, open your doors and stand up, they all stayed in their seat. And then we were seeing, on one hand, they were saying, oh, we want to protect people, we're going to keep our doors closed regardless of what the president said. But then the very next week, they were holding marches from their parking lot. They were going harder for culture than they were for Christ. Right. And it just really revealed the heart of their church, and the heart of their church wasn't for Jesus.
Yeah.
And so during that time, we opened up a Bible study in our home, and we defied the governor and had people in our home singing, praising, worshiping the Lord. And it got to the point where we saw compromise all around us. And like Jesus says, when you go to a town and you preach the gospel, if they reject you, you don't stay there continuing to beat down their doors when they've rejected you. No, Jesus said to knock the dust off of your shoes and leave the town. And so we prayed, and the Lord said, go. And in our search for where to go, we have some friends, lifelong friends in New Braunfels, and they said, hey, come on down to New Braunfels and check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah. And we just, the minute we landed in San Antonio, we both said, this is it. This is where God wants us to be. And so from there, doors opened, and, here we are. Here we are.
Coming up on 3 years.
Yeah, coming up on 3 years. So
we
really
call
blessed.
It the land of milk and honey.
Yep.
Yeah, the land of milk and honey. I love that. Strangely, or I guess not so strangely, but and you guys may, in your area of town, or us in our area of town, we have amassed a massive friend group of people who are of like mind here, which we never had in Portland. We had a handful of people who were willing to openly proclaim Christ. No one was willing to stand up, though, and be courageous in that way. And so we here we have amassed a huge amount of really strong friend group that have, most of them though, are what we call political refugees, refugees from other cities and states, often a lot of them on the West Coast. But we talk about all of us have different stories of how we got here, but the running thread was we were just drawn here. We prayed and God brought us here. And it's just been this like constant running theme with all of our friends. And so I don't know, I really believe that God has something incredible for this area. He's going to use this area mightily, and the people in this area, like you guys who are warriors, you know, tools in the hands of, you know, the mighty God. So we're stoked. We're stoked to see what's going to happen. I mean, we're in the path of the totality of the eclipse, so we'll see signs and wonders, you know.
Oh yeah, it has truly been, you know, obviously for us, we've been here in San Antonio. My set, what, 13? Yeah, 13 years. I came in like January 2011, and she came in December 2011. So when I transferred out here with my job, she couldn't at the time because she was finishing up her last year of you know, college and stuff. So being here 13 years has really been a blessing for us. Like, we couldn't, like, brief story for us, you know, when I first got applied for the job out here, we were supposed to be looking for jobs along the East Coast. You know, she's originally from New York, I'm originally from Georgia, and we was living in Florida. So it was like, all right, we're gonna try to find something on the East Coast, and there was nothing on the East Coast, like far as the job I was looking for, anything that was IT and kind of security, like security officer like related. So there was really nothing. Long story short, there was a position that was out there for IT in Guam. And being former military, I was going to look at Guam like, all right, well, I know I can take a military mindset, go to Guam, be there for about maybe 2 years, and then try to find my way stateside. But lo and behold, a position here in San Antonio opened up. And the assistant HR director at the time, I was like, hey, there's this position here in San Antonio. She was like, what are you waiting for? Apply. So I was like, all right, I applied. So I tell her about it, and she was like, well, that's not what we discussed.
Right. Like,
I was like,
Texas.
I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna get the job. Well, hey, here we are, 13 years later, here. And I believe that's something God had ordained for that to happen. And we,
for sure.
yeah, we have.
Oh, I think we got frozen there for a second.
Oh, there, it's back. It's back.
Yeah,
But
we're back.
has really been the in a sense story of our life of how God has, you know, put so many things together, so many different paths for us to take, and they've all worked out.
Yes, sure.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's so neat to look back over your life and know that there is another in the fire with you. You know, oftentimes you don't see it when you're in the midst, but when you look back, it's like that, you know, silly poem, you know, about footprints and, you know, oh, but there's only one set of footprints in the sand, you know, and it's there that you carried me. But my dad was a pastor, and he used to say that poem is only half right, because when you look back over your life, there's always only one set of footprints in the sand, and it's God's, and he's carrying you through from the womb to the tomb and into eternity. And that's, I mean, I found that to be true.
Yeah, and that is absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful to
Yeah.
to go actually have that type of basically analogy, you know, in the sense that you've carried this whole time, that God has ordained your steps, has ordered your steps through this life. And when you let go and let him dictate it and set it in motion, I mean, you really can't go wrong. Obviously, there's trials and tribulations that you come across, but him involved, it all works out. Now, because I brought up, you know, trials and tribulations, you know, I know we sent a prerequisite, you know, questionnaire out there. Would you mind going into some of the trials and tribulations that you guys have faced in your marriage and how you have overcome those?
Yeah, you know.
How long is the show?
Hey, we try to maintain a decent one, but you know, when it's good, it's good.
Friend, we're here all night. So
We've been through some doozies, even right from the get-go.
Yeah, right. Radical believer, was radically saved when I was 17. But at the time that he and I met, I was actually in a time of a little bit of anger towards God, because he had allowed for his purposes, but I was immature. So I met Eric, and he was not a believer, and I was a believer. And I knew that I was in rebellion, marrying him, not a believer. But we were so compatible in every other way, friends, you know, and I thought, well, he'll come around.
Not for a while.
Not for a while. Bad decision. And let me tell you, for people who are out there listening, and if you're a newlywed or if you're going to be married, you guys both being surrendered, a marriage can work for real, is if you surrender, both of you surrender to Christ. There is no way, because you don't know what going to be handed to you. And if you're both walking that from a worldly or one of you's walking it from a worldly perspective and another person is trying to do it from a godly perspective, oh man. And so when we got married,
well, yeah, it's the whole thing about not being equally yoked. I mean, if one's yoked, you're going one way and the other person's going the other way, you're not going to plow very well.
No. Right. And you're going to end up hurting each other, and it's going to be a futile effort. And so so we got married, and within the first month, we were hit with an incredibly hard circumstance. My husband was diagnosed with a tumor, and we had to immediately pack up and move from the town that we were living up to where his specialist was, which was in Portland, Oregon. And they had said, this is cancer. This is, it's been there a long time. We don't know how bad it is, but he needs emergency surgery immediately. And so within a month of our marriage, I had to move in with my mother-in-law. In a different,
that might be a marriage ender right there.
Yeah, that's a marriage ender.
No, just kidding, Mom.
No, we love you, Jenny. We love you. Anyway, I call her my mother in love, because she really is wonderful. But it's not where you want to spend your first year of marriage. I'll tell you that. Also, with your husband having radical surgeries and thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to be a widow, in my first year of marriage. Fortunately, it ended up not being cancer, but even worse, I don't know if it's worse, we found out that we couldn't have children naturally, that the tumor had created damage inside that would not allow us to get pregnant without extraordinary means, which was in vitro fertilization, but with even greater means than that. And so, which for me, I wanted to be a mother from the time that I was born. My bedroom was full of baby dolls. I wanted all of the children. And even so much that I had become a midwife. It was, having a child was so strong and heavy. And then I marry, and within 2 months, finding out that we were not going to be able to conceive naturally. And so all that to be said, Eric healed from his surgeries. Then we went on to years of saving money for IVF to be able to have children, knowing, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake though. Once we get there, Lord, I know you're going to see us through. Mind you, Eric's not a Christian yet. And so he's making decisions in his life that are not good, marriage ending decisions. And we are navigating through that. All the while, I have repented, and I'm begging God, the desire of my heart, Lord, is to have a husband whose heart is on fire for you. That really was the desire of my heart. Every time I would go to church, I would take 2 communions. I would take one for me and one for my husband, who wouldn't go to church with me. And all the while praying that his heart would be radically changed. And so we survived infidelity in the form of porn addiction. We survived alcoholism, and having survived cancer, surgeries.
Workaholic, not being there.
Yeah,
We
workaholic.
not having kids. We survived.
So yeah, and not having children and having to go through IVF, which begun our IVF journey. And we got pregnant with twins, and one of our twins died in the womb. And so I had to have that child while the other remained. And then after a few more months, our second child died in the womb. And so both of our children died. And that was incredibly devastating. And going through that with someone who's a believer and a non-believer was unbelievably, it was unspeakably hard.
Oh, wow.
But because how people comfort themselves when they're not saved is not in healthy ways. It's not ways that are conducive to a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got pregnant again, and again it was twins, and we thought, okay, this is it. And again, one by one, both of our children died. And then months later, the next year, we got pregnant again, and they died also. And by this time, we had lost 15 children and had suffered through all of that. And again, for me, someone who can go to the Lord and know that there's, Lord, I still am trusting you. We're not at the end of this journey. You have this in your hands. But my husband was seeking other means of comfort. And so we were dealing with some really marriage destroying stuff and behavior. And it came to the end of our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And we had been married 8 years.
Literally the end.
And I thought, well, I can't go on with these infractions anymore. And so I contacted a divorce attorney. And it came to, they say that you have to hit rock bottom, have to hit the bottom before you come up on your knees and see the Lord. And it was then that God answered my prayer for 8 years. My daily prayer for my husband to not just give his life to Jesus, but my prayer was for him to be radically saved, life changed, and be the spiritual leader of our household. And in that moment, it was a lightning bolt moment. You go ahead and tell.
No, go for it. You're eloquently explaining this perfectly.
Yeah. It was the Holy Spirit came upon him and changed. He doesn't even look like the same person that he was then.
That's just the hair missing.
They say, right. They say God only made a few perfect heads, but the rest he covered in hair. So you guys are doing pretty good. But at that moment, the Holy Spirit fell upon Eric in a radical way. And
your mom even tells me that I didn't look the same.
After
this, was so much the fact that everything was turned upside down because what I was doing was wrong. I put my priorities totally wrong. Work, this, that, whatever, myself, but selfish things. My marriage, my wife were down here, and God needed to be put up from top. I needed to flip this all around. Have my work completely down at the bottom, have all this extraneous stuff all at the bottom. It needs to be God, my wife, and my family, and then me somewhere down here and all the other extraneous stuff. Once that actually happened, like Sarah says, there was marriage ending stuff. So much of the fact we considered that marriage was over. we actually now have a new marriage. Now, granted, you don't get a second
I don't get a second
gift.
anniversary
No,
gift,
no,
but
no. But we do. We consider this as our second marriage.
yeah, actually, I did. I got the best gift of all, and that was a husband whose heart was on fire for the things of God. He went from a guy who thought, well, the Bible's it's an okay book, but whatever. And yeah, if you take communion, that was akin to some cult, and he would joke. Again, we're dating ourselves. In the 90s, there was a cult who had purple shrouds and Nikes,
Yeah, I
and
know.
Heaven's Gate cult. Well, he would always say, oh, break out the purple shrouds and the Nikes. You're drinking the Kool-Aid again, And so to somebody who is on their knees, weeping, praising God and thanking him for the blood that was shed for him. And so my family, we're from Southern California. My parents were saved in the Jesus movement of the 70s. And my dad was a Maranatha music concert promoter and a DJ. That he then became a pastor. But that being said, one of my dad's best friends was a musician, and I grew up with this musician in our home. They would stay in our home with us. Sadly, not for him, he's in glory, but for his family, Keith died in a plane crash. And when he was 29, and it was devastating to my parents, but Keith was my dad's best friend. We knew him personally. Well, Eric, not being raised with any of this stuff, randomly finds this song, and he said, Sarah, I've got to play you this song. Hold on, let me cue it up. Let me get this song together. I got to play you this song because this song completely accurately describes what just happened to me. And the song is by this artist named Keith Green. I don't know if you know who Keith Green is, but he was a very well-known Christian gospel artist. And there's a song called Your Love Broke Through. And
I thought I was the only one that knew about this guy. I'm like, you have to hear this, Sarah.
And I just broke down crying. I said, Keith Green was one of my dad's best friends. I can't believe this is of all the songs, Keith died in like 1982, I think, long before all of this, but this is the song, and it was like, oh Lord, I can just see, the Lord and Keith laughing, up, in heaven going, all right, yeah, this is the song. But if anyone wants to look up that song, it's Keith Green, Your Love Broke Through. Anyway, it was radical and miraculous. And so we had one more shot of having a child. And I mean, one more shot. We only had a few more embryos that were left. And I thought, this is it. Lord, I totally get it. All of this and all of our tremendous loss and our broken heart over our children, having to bury your children one after the other. This is it. It was all for Eric to be saved. We were waiting for this moment. And it was one of those hopeful moments of, Lord, I get it now. You've brought us this far, and it's just like that Christianese that people say, God doesn't bring you this far to let you fail, right? And we got pregnant, and the pregnancy was going beautifully. Everything was wonderful. Our ultrasounds, we thought, Lord, you did it. I totally get why you did this. Eric's been saved, and now our children are going to be raised in a home that's full of you, and I get it. I get why you brought us here. Okay, you were the other one in the fire with us, and it was going great. Pregnancy was great. Everything was good. And then going to just one of our routine appointments, and I get a call from the doctor saying, I don't think this is anything. It's just, but since our concerns of the past, there's just something that was concerning on the ultrasound. And I was like, nah, God, I totally believe that this is going to be just fine. And I went in for another ultrasound, and the baby had died. And it was like, Lord, how could you let this happen? This wasn't supposed to be this way. We had thousands of people praying. We knew that God was going to be glorified through answering our prayers because we believed. We had faith, faith, like to move the mountain. All I need is the faith of a mustard seed, Lord. And even with the faith of a mustard seed, our baby still died. And that was the end. And we would never be able to have a child together in this lifetime. And that broke me in a way that I can't even describe. I was broken,
inconsolable.
I became catatonic for a while. It was something that I couldn't overcome. And so, but little by little, I came out of that hole of, back into normal living. But the bottom line is that inside I was dead. I was going to church. I was serving in ministry. I was smiling on the outside, but inside I was still just absolutely destroyed. And during that same time, 3 months after the death of our last child, I got the news that my precious dad was diagnosed with cancer. And so then Eric and I walked my dad to the gates of heaven. And he passed away 3 months after his diagnosis. And then 1 year to the day of my dad's passing, I got the news that my best friend had fallen asleep on the couch and died.
Oh my goodness.
And that same week, I was going into surgery for a tumor in my breast that had been caused by the drugs that had been given to me during IVF. Oh. And so I was getting ready to be put under for surgery, and finding out that Amber had died suddenly. And it was just one of those times where it was like, Lord, I don't even know if I want to wake up from the surgery. But also I was so angry with God, for a God that I love. I trusted you, Lord. God, I trusted you, and you've allowed all these things. And I know that you're God. I don't doubt that you're God. I don't doubt, but do you hate me? Is that what it is? Are you angry? Is that why you're allowing all of this? And meanwhile, my husband is like, okay, well, what do I do, God? How do I fix her? She's broken, really broken. And then one day I was serving at our church at a women's conference. Again, I was in ministry, but inside I had a hard time relating even to anybody at church, because at one point, one of the gals that I served alongside, I couldn't even share what I was going through, because she said, gosh, I don't even think I know anybody who's died. Oh, and it's like, yeah, that's amazing. Wow. I'm so grateful that is what you are walking through. But, I know that you can't relate to this burden, right, that I was walking through. And so I went to a conference and I was serving at it. And I just said to the Lord, listen, God, I am so broken, and I don't even want to live anymore, but also I don't want to die, because that means I'm going to have to come see you. And I'm so mad at you that I don't want to spend eternity looking at you, who stole my babies.
That's a weird conflict.
Yeah,
right?
that is a conundrum. You don't want to live, but you don't want to die, you know? And so that day, the Lord spoke to me and healed me, radically changed me. And the Lord, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind. There is no doubt in my mind of what the Lord did to me, through me, and for me that day. He spoke to me and he said, Sarah, you are not cursed. You were chosen for this. I love you so much and you are so special to me that for this you were chosen. You weren't rejected. It was Joseph who was chosen to be beaten by his brothers and trafficked into slavery and taken and lied about. When he tried to do the right thing, he was lied on and thrown in prison for years. And then, oh, there's hope. God, here's the hope. It's this baker. He's gonna, tell the king that I'm okay and I'm in here. Come get me. And then he gets forgotten for 2 more years. This is Joseph, and all of these horrible things. Look at what Joseph's life. I mean, I bet Joseph looked back, during that time and thought, God's forgotten me. This is God. Do you hate me? Oh my gosh, the brokenness that he endured. And God showed me all of this. And then he showed me that he set Joseph in this high place. And when his brothers came for help later, when he saw them and recognized his brothers, first of all, it said that Joseph had to go to his room and weep. Even though Joseph knew that God had chosen him and God had set him in this high place, the pain of what Joseph had walked through was still there. Yeah. So if you're walking through something, or if you've walked through in that pain, God knows, and that pain is so human, and it's okay. It's okay to feel that. It's okay to be real and vulnerable and know that it hurts when you have loss. It hurts, and that's okay. You don't have to fake it in church and pretend with Christianese that brokenness and losing your children, or walking through what, life's worst, all of that. You don't have to fake it, right? It's real, but don't lose the crux of the story. And that is what Joseph said to his brothers: what you meant for evil, God meant for good, for the saving of many lives. And Joseph said, for this I was chosen, for the saving of many lives. And so that was what the Lord spoke to me that day. He said, Sarah, someday you will know why, and it will be right. And I knew that someday, when I'm on the other side, I will stand at a place where I can see the beginning and the end. Yeah. When we know, as we're fully known, we'll know why the unexplainable happened to us, and it'll be right. And it'll have happened for the glory of God's kingdom. Yes. And so someday I will know why. We will know why. Someday we will meet our children. They were here for a purpose. Their purpose has, insofar, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of women who have also walked through child loss, pregnancy loss, and through that, my children's lives have touched so many people. Our children's lives have touched so many people. Eric has been able to counsel men who have walked through this on how to support their wives through this. Apart from my story, Eric was delivered from porn addiction, which is such a huge, rampant thing that we've found. And Eric has been able to counsel numerous men on walking through being delivered from this and delivered from the demons that are plaguing.
Your experience, when you received Jesus, like Christ is Lord? Like what happened that day, or what can you walk us through that? Like, you just wake up one day and
Yeah, for me or for Eric?
for Eric.
Well, so for me, it's interesting because, like Sarah was saying, I wasn't a believer. That is not really the truth per se. I always knew in my heart, my soul, in my entire being that there was a creator. I was just being as everyone else is. I was selfish. I wanted to live for myself. I wanted to not deny Christ. I wanted to poo-poo all the, the church and all that stuff. And I guarantee about 90% of all the people that are atheists are the same way. They know in their hearts, just as I did. And I knew I was living incorrectly. Like I said, we've had 2 different marriages, and there was a point, and I like to call it I never served in the military. Thank you for your service. But I would like to think that what boot camp is like, based on the movies that I've seen, to kind of like tear you down and build you back up.
Exactly what happens. It's amazing how you get quickly brainwashed in there. I literally was telling my wife about a situation I experienced up there. I'm like, I'm almost 42, and this happened in the year 2000, and it still affects me today. I've been away from so
well, like I said, once again, thank you. I kind of put it to the fact that when I got to a point where it's like, I can't do all this for myself, because everything was falling apart. Everything, all the things I was doing, I prided myself on working, being an amazing provider, doing all this stuff. I was like, I was gonna lose my job. I was gonna lose the place that we're staying. I was losing all the things that I thought I was in control of. And I got to the point I was going to lose my wife. I was going to lose my life. I got to the point where it's like, what do I have to control? I'm not in control of anything. I got to the point where it was, I had nothing to look at down, because it was all gone. The only place I had to go was to look up. And I realized at that point, it's like, you took all of this away so I could be forced to look at you. And that point, it was like, I want to say, try to be trifle, but it's like moment, it's like, oh, I have to look up to you. And like I said, I knew for a fact in my heart and my soul and every fiber of my being that there was a creator. And that point, he's like, yeah, I'm going to take this. I'm going to keep taking this away until you only focus on me. And that was the only thing I could focus on. And that was like I said, the boot camp analogy. He basically stripped everything out of my life, except for my wife. I mean, but even she was going to be stripped from my life until all I could focus on was you, the creator, Yeshua. I mean, it was the only thing I could do, the only thing I could see. And that was the point. Was like, okay, well, that's all I had to live for, because that's the only thing to live for. And once that happened, like Sarah says, it's like a whole new creation, literally. And that was it. And it's been a whole new ball game ever since.
So, as you're going through all these trials that you both were, dealing with, and now you're a new Christian, how did you really, help your wife, you know, learn to love Jesus? Like how
So that's a great question. And so I was a quote unquote new Christian. And I had the amazing ability to spend time with my father-in-law, which, as Sarah said, her father was a pastor. And we've had long walks. The nice thing was he lived in Maui at the time. So we got the long walks on the beach with my father-in-law. And it sounds weird, but that's what it was. And we talked about a lot of cool things, a lot of neat things. And I remember one of the things he said, he goes, okay, and this coming from a pastor kind of rings true. Now that you are a believer, you are a follower of Christ. Now things are going to get interesting. Like, what do you mean? He's like, the devil didn't care about you when you were not a believer. Now he does. Now you're on your radar. Now you're on his radar.
Yeah.
You went through some trials and tribulations. Just be wary about what's going to be coming up next. And like you said, how do you walk through the next trials and tribulations? How do you help Sarah in these type of things? Very interesting that you say that, because you read the Bible and you're like, okay, the husband's supposed to be the spiritual leader. Well, Sarah has been a believer since she was what, 17.
Mhm.
She's had way more long runway. She's got way more Bible knowledge than me. I mean, she can tons of Bible knowledge. I'm an infant in my belief. And so how do I know? How do I help her? The only way I know how to help is like when we get to a place where like we're fighting or we have an issue or there's a big, whatever's going on, whatever it may be. I may not know the answer. Sarah may not know the answer, but I know who does know the answer. And the answer is always pray and get in the word. And I know for a fact when we're not in the word every single day, or if we're not praying together, yeah, you're going to have issues no matter what, even when you're doing that. But if you're not doing those things all the time, it's going to be a lot harder road to even go down. So those are the two main things. There's a plethora of other things you can be doing, but those two main things are going to be the cornerstone.
Yeah, you got to build your spiritual muscle with that. Just like you, with the person that goes to the gym. I don't go to the gym, but but as they go to the gym, you working out. So if I hadn't been in a long time, I'm thinking I could probably throw 235 up easy. I did it when I was young. I could probably do it now. I might get it up one time, but trying that second time, not gonna work because I have not been doing that as often. So that's why it's our daily bread. It's daily is each day. So in order to build yourself up in the Lord and in all things spiritual, you got to do this daily. So that's a good point that you brought up. That like especially you, like, I know who knows the answer.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and me being at the time more spiritually mature than Eric, and having walked with the Lord longer at that time than he had, the Lord allowed me to be taken out. I mean, I was completely decimated, devastated, torn apart by when we lost our last child. And so I was just living in a pile of rubble, of ash. And Eric had no choice but to do heavy spiritual lifting. It was like, okay, Lord, okay, bomb just went off in my house. Everything is ashes. What do I do? How do I do this? And it was like, okay, brother, get in the gym,
Buckle up.
buckle up. And so Eric had to be he was like, thrust into being the spiritual leader right away.
Yeah, I was thrown in the deep end of the pool.
He was thrown into the deep end of the pool, straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And both of us, we had to really, through Eric's coming to know the Lord, and mind you, this is back in 2010. So you've been a hardcore believer for 13, 14 years
Mm-hmm.
now. But so this was a ways back, but yeah, you've matured since then a lot. But I will say that we had to also have like a breaking down of our marriage. Well, not a breaking down. Our last marriage broke down. We didn't get a divorce. We stayed married, but we refer to that as my first marriage or his first marriage. He'll say oh, that was your first husband that did that. I don't do those things anymore.
He's wrong,
and
no man.
yeah, he said that man is
new creature.
Yeah, it was that old man is dead and buried in the ocean in Maui. That's where he got baptized. I got baptized in a freezing cold creek in Ashland, Oregon. He got to be baptized in the ocean in Maui. So, anyway, my sins were washed away a little more, but yeah, but anyway, we really found that if we are not living the Ephesians 5 marriage, if we are not living that model, and not the model that many churches want to, beat people over the head with, which is, wives, submit to your husbands, submit, but then they don't
They
read
don't
the
read
rest.
the rest.
They don't read the rest. They don't read what it means,
Right.
or what the role, and they read what the wife's role is and really, beat people over the head with that, to the point where people don't listen to that kind of advice anymore, because they think, oh, I'm not his subservient person. But listen, the real reality is that if you do marriage, both of you, and so that's one thing with marriage, and even walking through being healed through porn addiction or losing children or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you are not living your marriage out in the steps that God put out, your marriage is going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And what
marriage is hard without that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And with that, so
I mean, marriage is hard when you are living this, but to not be equally yoked or not living out the Ephesians 5, it becomes insanely hard.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not sustainable. There's that statistic that says that, more than 50%, 60% of marriages end in divorce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, in the church, or Christians have the same divorce rate, but that's not actually true.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a skewed statistic, because they have interviewed people, and there are many, many households that claim to be Christians. They are cultural Christians, but they are not biblical Christians. They are not followers of Yeshua. They are not biblical students and living his word. They are just, well, I guess I'm, I live in America, so yeah, I'm a Christian, but they're living regular old
Mm-hmm.
living a hedonistic life.
I was gonna say backslidden.
Backslidden, or maybe they have never actually gotten saved. They just know that my grandma was a Christian, and we go to church on Easter, so I must be a Christian,
Right.
And so those are the people also who were part of that interview and that survey. And so that's why those numbers match up with the same numbers of the general population divorce numbers. But when they interview people who are true biblical believers, are people who really are followers of Yeshua, the divorce rate is like less than 2%. And, of actual people who are striving in their lives for righteousness, the divorce rate is so incredibly low. And that is what you find when you live your marriage. Both of you have to both play both roles, right? When a man, the way that Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, totally sacrificial living for your spouse, it's easy as a woman to fall under his authority, because knowing that he is seeking Christ as his as the example.
Mm-hmm.
And as the leader, if his leader is Christ and not himself, not his ego, if he really is seeking Christ and Christ is his leader, then as a woman, to have an alpha male, ain't no beta here. This is the alpha male situation. When your alpha male is being led by the ultimate creator, then being under his authority is like amazing, because that he's not going to lead you astray.
Mm-hmm.
And so
anything is a joy, right? You get to sit back.
It's a joy. Yeah, well, but I mean, we're equal partners. And then, because it also says submit one to another. So it's not a matter of him being the Lord over me and I'm just some subservient mouse. I mean, God didn't make me that way. God did not make me that way. I have a big mouth and God made it that way for a reason. But yeah, that is what we found. And when we have strayed from that, even when we're both walking with the Lord, but
being in our flesh,
then things start falling apart, and we start living in our flesh, and then we start standing in our flesh. And did you say that? And what was that you said? I heard that, and then you get all puffed up. I mean, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It'll take you down. It'll take you down. And so for us, that is our check-in, if ever, I say, is that what Jesus would do to the bride of his life? He says, that doesn't sound like subservient to me. And then we're like, okay, we need to pray. We need to get in the word together. And yeah, that's but yeah, letting Jesus be the Lord of it.
What would you say to the young newlywed couple or the person considering getting married? What advice would you give to that young couple or that to embark on marriage?
To me or Eric?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
You're thinking?
You have one?
Well, first of all, both of you get right with Christ. Live, both of you, aside from each other, strive to live righteously. That's number one. Live a life that would please God. If your life, and get real with yourself, look at your life and go, me playing video games, 17 hours a day, or when I get off work and somebody's in there and they're doing dishes and cooking for me and I'm over here playing video games. Listen, if Jesus walked into your house, you would not be doing that. You would not be doing that. And so really, not just for your spouse or your marriage, but for you in your life, are you coming correct to Christ? That's huge. That's number one.
I got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
So mine, I would say, yeah, you have to be together with Christ for sure. But I also tell if these young couples were coming to become marriage, some of the things that I would say that they should be doing is basically be servient to each other. But people don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that, but they need to do that. And you need to learn how to do that. But there's also two things that we do that are not really biblical per se, but they're very good things. I think Sarah bought this, thing on, I don't know, one of those little sayings, those wood sayings or whatever. And she puts it up there and it says, always kiss me. What does it say? Always kiss me
good night.
Good night. But it's kind of the same thing. It's like, don't go to bed mad. If you have something that you're going to be dealing with, deal with it then. Deal with it. Don't simmer on it. Don't do that. And there's also things even if you are a Christian, you're going to have problems. Deal with them. Don't hide from them. Be a man, put on your big boy pants, put on your big girl pants, and just deal with them. And then another thing is, well, we're so petty. I can't speak for anyone else, but for myself, it's like we fight over the little stupidest things. And like, I remember we're having don't even know what we're fighting about. I'm sure we were just fighting just about random things. And we would go through fights. And then after a while, we're like, what were we even fighting for? I don't know. And then it comes down to whatever it is in 5 years, will this really matter?
Yeah.
And if we both ask and we're like, this won't even matter in 5 minutes, let alone 5 years. Now, if it matters in 5 years, then yeah, hold true to whatever your convictions are. But most likely, I guarantee you, it's not going to matter in 5 years. Let it go.
Yeah. And even if you guys joke, so Eric and I are, we like to think we're pretty funny. We're funny. We love
not just looking
and not just looking.
Well, we're actually a hot mess. She's hot and I'm a mess.
But respect each other in public. Respect each other at home, but in reality, you're going to have arguments, and there's going to be times when, you're mad because he didn't do the laundry, or he's mad because whatever, that stuff happens, that petty stuff. That's just life. But when you're out in public, when you go to dinner with friends, don't ever, ever put your spouse down. Even if you're out to dinner with a whole bunch of girlfriends, don't nitpick your spouse in front of your girlfriends. Don't
praise in public.
Praise in public. And then if there is critique in private together. Do not critique your spouse in public. That is so degrading. Even like, oh, well, I was just kidding. Don't. That's not a kid. And it'll break down the spirit of your spouse. And listen, if you have friends that are getting in the way, if like, well, hey, this was my buddy before we got married, and this is just how it is. Or, girls can be friends with guys, and guys, listen, when you get married, this is what is the most important.
That's what matters.
This is your ride or die, or ride till you die.
Yeah.
Legit. And so all of those other friends, they are all disposable. All of your friends are disposable, including your family, because you're to leave your family and cling to your spouse if you're getting married biblically. And so I know that that's hard to hear, but listen, if your girlfriend goes off and gets a divorce and she wants you to go out to the club with her, do you know how many times Eric and I have counseled marriages of people whose friend got divorced, and lo and behold, now a few months later, she's wanting to divorce her husband.
Grass is always greener.
The grass is greener. Look how happy Kathy is.
It's from all the manure.
Yeah, it's all from all the manure. Exactly.
Good.
And I can tell you, every single one of those people who left their spouse and their friend are all fake happy. They are miserable. They pretend to be happy, but they are miserable. Listen, the grass will be green where you water it. So water it in your own marriage. If you're at work and you're a dude and you have a coworker and she's stroking your ego, and your wife is at home with a new baby and she hasn't been paying much attention to you because she's, completely tapped out. Listen, do not rebuke that spirit of Jezebel in the name of Jesus, and you keep yourself correct. Okay. Demons are out there, and they are, it says that the devil is like, he's not a lion, but he is like a roaring lion. He is the adversary seeking whom he may devour. And if you think, well, he won't get me, he will. He got Eve and Adam, and they were legit walking with God in the garden. Okay. The devil was so tricky that he was able to trick other angels out of heaven, right? To get away from their inheritance in heaven. He tricked them. He will trick you. You have to put on the armor of God, Ephesians chapter 6. And before that, Ephesians chapter 5, marriage. Memorize that and live it. There is just no compromise. There is no compromise. You cannot let a crack in. You cannot. Because if you do, the enemy will come in and you will be destroyed. It's happened to people that we know. It happened in my parents' marriage. It happens. Like you can't ever let your guard down. We've been married for 22 years, together for 23 years.
Keep your guard up.
Keep your guard up.
Yeah.
You've been married 1 year.
Keep your guard up.
Keep your guard up. You've been married 50 years.
Keep your guard up.
I just met someone the other day who'd gotten a divorce at 49 years married. Now, I don't know all the circumstances. But keep your guard up. 50 years married, that's not time to put it in neutral and glide, because the enemy wants to tear you up and ruin your life. And you can't let him. You've got to stand strong. You've got to. And one thing that I've found, though, Eric and I have counseled many marriages, and I can't say that they all took the the biblical advice. They didn't, and many of them didn't survive. A lot of them did. But one thing that we found that was true is that both parties have to be willing to, first of all, humble yourself, even if you're the spouse that's been wronged. You got to humble yourself. You don't get to come to a place of beating your spouse over the head with a hammer because they blew it, because you're not going to be down the road. You're going to blow it. It just is the way that it is. And so you have to both come to a situation of humility and both come to a place that you are willing to both work on it. Wouldn't you say that?
100%.
Yeah. And the marriages that we see fail, one person is like, he did this to me. Or she did this. This is what she did. And so I responded, and that's why I did it. And the couples that we see that come in with attitudes like that,
both submit.
They're done. They're done.
Yeah.
That is why in Ephesians chapter 5, it says, submit one to another. You have to. If you want your marriage to work, you got to do it the formula of the one who created marriage.
Absolutely.
And it's
That is
drop
the mic.
mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. Mic drop. And you know what? When we were going through in vitro fertilization, this is before Eric was even saved, and we had lost by that point 10 children. And we kept coming back, trying to have this work. And our reproductive endocrinologist, our physician, said to us, I cannot believe that you guys are still married. No one is still married at this point. He said every couple, their relationship has ended by now. And we were like, whoa. I mean, that was something that just was like, and I mean, that was before Eric had even surrendered to the Lord. But then so I want to say we do have a little bit of wisdom, only because we've
Gone through it.
And we've done it right sometimes and we've done it wrong sometimes. And what we have found that works for every marriage. It works for every marriage. And the ones
That'll preach.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't write the book though. I didn't make the design of marriage. Marriage is one man and one woman. That marriage was created by God. Where did marriage come from? It came from God. Yeah. He's the creator of marriage. Yes. And he is the one who gets to write the book on how to make that marriage work.
Just follow it.
Well, it's just like one couple stated that we did a show with, God's the manufacturer. He know who he made. Yep. He knows you inside and out.
True story.
So to have that, I've heard Dr. Miles Monroe, he has in his teachings, he has brought up that same basically analogy. He brings up, the Apple iPhone, right? When you open up the iPhone, there's a manual inside. And in that manual tells you everything you need to know about that phone. But oftentimes, we just get that phone out of the box and just start using it. You don't go and check what the manual say. So in our case, being believers and Christians following Christ, in order for us to work properly, we got to look in that manual and see exactly how we should move and operate. So God is so amazing at doing this thing. Man, I just can't.
Well, it made me think about like Eric, when you said, it happened like really fast for you, like it's kind of like dropped it, like God knows you, right? Like this process had to happen the way it happened for you, and Sarah, you needed to be in the place that you were so that he could step forward. Because if you were in your rightful place, then he may not have taken the time the reins to step forward. And so you had to be back here so that he could
God knew. I mean, he knew. Yeah. And he knew, like you said, he knew what was needed for Eric to get to that point. And and I've said this before to Eric, I've said it multiple times actually, that if that is what it took for Eric to be saved, I would go through it all over again for this. And the salvation. And one thing that I would say is that if you are married, look, don't go into a marriage with someone who's not saved. If you are saved and you want to have a spouse that is saved, don't do it. You are still on the precipice. But if you have done it, okay, if you have done it and you are married, no, don't walk away. You are now under a covenant. You made a vow with God. Okay, marriage is a vow to God together. And even if your spouse is out trifling and your spouse is not doing what it is, you still are accountable for your life and for your vow. Okay. So if as a wife, there's a book called The Power of the Praying Wife, right? And there is no power in prayer, but there's a power in who answers that prayer and the one who hears the prayer, right? There's no power in your telephone. It's the person on the other end who answers it, right? So the power of a praying wife is helpful prayers for a wife to start praying over her husband. But let me encourage you and say this. Anything that you ask of the Father that is within his will. Jesus said, anything that is asked for in the will of the Father, he will do. Okay. So if you ask, and it is the Father's will, it says that none should perish. So if you ask for whoever, not even your spouse, if it's your brother, if it's your child that's walking away, pray for them to be saved, because God will answer that prayer. They will. It's never going to be in your timeline. God's timeline does not match up with mine, but I promise you,
Exactly.
God's word does not come back void. And he says, anything that you ask for that's within his will, it will be done. And it's his will that none should perish. So have that hope. Have that hope. Pray for your spouse to be saved. But, sometimes it doesn't happen on your timeline. And sometimes you're going to walk through hell alongside with him for him to get there. But if you're not married yet and you are trying to yoke up with a wild bull, you are going to be along for a ride that you don't want.
So let me ask you, Sarah. So like a lot of things in life, was it worth it?
Well, I think that it absolutely was worth it, because you got saved, and the Lord answered that prayer for me 8 years into our marriage.
And it wasn't just her prayers. It was my grandma's, my other grandma's,
there was
my
lots
friends.
of people praying.
I mean, everyone.
Yeah.
But you get the credit.
Well, I can only answer for my prayers. I mean, whatever. I got the favor. No, I'm kidding. No. But so in that sense, was it worth it? I think it's all worth it. It's just like that, the Gaither family that sings, "It will be worth it all when we see Jesus. Our trials will seem so small when we see Christ. One glimpse of his dear face, all sorrow will erase. So bravely run the race till we see Christ." Anyway, so yes, someday when we see it all, it'll be worth it all.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Man, this has really been a great show. Thank you for sharing your trials and tribulations, and I know
Wealth of information.
it's going to bless
the socks off someone.
Bless us to hear that, and for as believers to go through things, and sometimes we will get into this fairy tale world like, well, I'm in Christ now, nothing's bad's going to happen to me, everything is fine. There's some real stuff that happened. You said you heard your father-in-law, your past the fact, get ready, the stuff is going to come. Now you're on the radar,
right?
You saved, all right, well, here comes some stuff, and we're gonna see how you're really gonna put this stuff to work, if you really know Jesus or not.
Right.
So it's amazing to take that on and fight that battle. A lot of people don't want to fight the battle anymore. Stand there and stand firm.
Put on the armor of God first.
Yes.
The helmet of salvation, and gird yourself with truth, and make sure that your feet are shod with the gospel, the good news, all of those things, a breastplate of righteousness, meaning live your life righteous, so that when the fiery arrows of the enemy come, they'll just bounce right off, because you've been living, there's nothing for him to accuse you of, because you've been living righteously. That's the armor of God. Put that armor on. You have to. This is a spiritual battle that we are in. And if you don't, you're going to get eaten up by that lion, and it says seeking whom he may devour, right? That doesn't mean, there was a gentleman the other day who said, the devil is just a mouse with a megaphone. I said, you better watch out. He's not. He's been conquered by Yeshua, and that only through the authority given to us through Jesus are we able to conquer. Acts talks about people who were not believers, but they heard the words that the disciples were casting demons out of, and so they thought, well, that sounds fun, let's go try that. And you know what happened to them? They got beat. They got beat down. So don't underestimate the enemy. that is not part of the art of war, right?
Right.
The art of war, get your armor ready. Don't underestimate the enemy, and know that through Christ, you are more than a conqueror.
Absolutely.
I'm not a conqueror. Sarah is not a conqueror. I'm a snack for a roaring lion. But because,
Christ.
we are all like sheep that have gone astray. There was this whole movement recently called lions, not sheep, right? Oh, lions, not sheep. We're, and only these people, they're just sheeple, bad, they're sheeple, and I'm a lion. And it's like, no, there's only one lion, and that's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And only he is Revelation 5:5. I have a tattoo here of the Lion of the tribe of Judah with his crown, with the emerald, which is the ephod for the lion on the ephod. That's the gem that represents the tribe of Judah. And Revelation 5:5, John is in the throne room and he's crying. And the elders say, "Why are you crying?" He says, "No one is worthy to open these scrolls." And the elder goes, look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has won the victory, and he alone is worthy to open the scrolls. That is the good news. That is what we shod our feet with, is the good news that the Lion of the tribe of Judah has won the victory, and he alone is worthy. And so that is what we need to put on ourselves, the truth. We need to put on the salvation of Christ, the good news, the righteous living, all of that. That's the only way that we can get into this spiritual battle. But the bottom line is that hard things are going to come in your life. All of that Christianese that, churches like to say, well, God would never give you more than you can handle. Heck yes. That's the whole point of needing God, is that you're going to get a whole lot more than you can ever handle. And especially if you are one of the chosen ones that, like Joseph, who have one incredibly hard thing after another. But if you stick close to the Lord, then you will know that you are chosen for this, for the saving of many lives.
Yep.
And so just know that, yes, there is a purpose for your pain and there is hope in your hopelessness. But the the fake sayings that are, written on boards up in Marshalls or something that you put up in your house, a lot of those are taken completely out of context. That's where biblical study comes in. So important to read the Bible for yourself.
Yeah.
I'll step off my preaching soapbox.
All good. As they say, that word was for somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
We receive it as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks for having us on,
you
guys.
You.
This is a real honor to come on and be asked to come on here.
It's really, and I also want to give a shout out to your podcast that you do, the Remedy podcast, correct?
It's The Remedy with Sarah Amazing Grace. So I go by Sarah Grace. That's my name. And as you can see, I'm kind of a bit of a big mouth. I wouldn't call myself a preacher, but I'm definitely a truth speaker. And throughout the years, that moniker kind of stuck. People would say, "Oh, it's Sarah Amazing Grace," kind of thing. And it was like, it's not because I am amazing, but because I am saved by the amazing grace through many dangers, toils, and snares in this life. That is what has brought me through. And so it's The Remedy with Sarah Amazing Grace. Yeah, that's my podcast.
My favorite.
I hope you guys check it out when you get an opportunity. I want to thank our listeners. Again, like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
And we want to appreciate you guys for joining us. It truly was a pleasure having you guys on, and we hope to connect sometime in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
Absolutely. Y'all are right here close to, so there's no reason for it to not happen.
Right.
True story.
Yeah.
All right,
you.
You guys. Well, God bless you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
What's up, podcast family? We just want to say thank you for tuning in, watching our episodes. We pray that what we are saying is a blessing to you. God placed it on our hearts to share with other married folks and soon to be married folks. So again, we just pray that it's blessing you.
And stay tuned for the next video. Again, we want to thank you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for supporting This Works For Us podcast.